I am happy to welcome you to the last plenary session for the 2017 ACTFL Convention. As you have seen in our convention program, we have highlighted issues that are key to moving our language agenda forward: teacher recruitment and retention, language research and its application to the classroom, the national report recommendations of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and finally, an issue that is near and dear to my heart: language advocacy. As language educators, advocacy is central to what we do. Until our country wakes up and makes learning other languages as normal as learning to multiply and divide, we are destined to become advocates for our field. In a survey conducted by ACTFL and the National Center for College and University Admissions in 2014, fully 92% of language educators respondents agreed that advocacy is part of our professional role. The ACTFL CAPE standards approved for accrediting teacher education programs include a standard on how well teacher candidates can advocate for the important benefits of language learning. And in order to be a national board-certified teacher, one needs to be able to document how advocacy has played a role in one's professional life. And after that, no surprise, in our most recent ACTFL member survey, not only do ACTFL members expect ACTFL to take a lead in advocating for languages, but 61.3% are satisfied with ACTFL's providing them the resources necessary to advocate on behalf of language education. Well, folks, that percentage is about to go higher as more and more of our members, and even beyond our membership, learn about ACTFL's latest efforts through the National Public Awareness Campaign, Lead with Languages. If you have not yet been to the website, I strongly encourage you to access it and use it not only for your benefit, but to share with parents, students, administrators, and policymakers. I am pleased to introduce our panelists for this session. First, Marty Abbott, Executive Director of ACTFL and one of our most active language advocates. Next to Marty is Steve Levine, a true champion of bilingualism in America. He is the host of the America the Bilingual podcast, which he produces in cooperation with ACTFL's Lead with Languages campaign. Steve was named a Fellow of the Advanced Leadership Initiative of Harvard University in 2015 and a Fellow of the Distinguished Career Institute at Stanford University in 2016. He is the former chairman and CEO of Levinger, which he started with his wife, Lori Granger Levine, in 1987. And finally, Amanda Seawald, the owner and author of Maracas Language Programs, Learning Kaleidoscope Educational Consulting, which publishes innovative curriculum materials and music to enhance language instruction and learning. Amanda is also a passionate language advocate and is an outstanding example of the power of one in terms of making a difference for our field. She is currently the president of the Foreign Language Educators of New Jersey, FLENJ, and is with us today to tell her stories of making a difference by speaking up for language learning. Let's start with Marty, and then we will hear from Steve, and finally, Amanda.
Thank you, Dessa. Good afternoon, everyone. For how many years did we hear the refrain, you know what our language profession needs? A good national public awareness campaign. And we talked about it and talked about it and talked about it. So I'm very pleased to say that after 2005, the Year of Languages, and then Discover Languages, we have launched on March 1st a national public awareness campaign, Lead with Languages. And I want to say that this came on the heels of the release of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences national report and it's very much aligned with the recommendations of that report. And Bill Rivers is here in the audience from JNCL. He knows a lot about that report, and if anyone has questions after the presentation, they can certainly get in touch with Bill. And there are a lot of things we touched upon this in another plenary about ways that you can be involved in that. But the national campaign is really designed to create a new generation of Americans who are fully bilingual and biliterate for the important work that we need to do as a country internationally. So I'm showing you the campaign objectives, and they are very much in line with the recommendations of the AAAS report. So we're talking about recruiting teachers for our national teacher shortage, providing access to all students to have the opportunity to learn another language, leveraging those community resources in public-private partnerships to maximize the language learning in our individual communities, focusing on heritage learners, focusing on Native American languages, and finally, trying to expand the opportunities for students to study abroad. So what I want to focus on today in terms of the campaign is really how you and your students can be involved in leveraging the information that's on the campaign website. I'm showing you some of our sponsors, some of our great collaborators, some of our great partners who contributed to fund this campaign. All of the funds that we raise for the campaign go directly into the campaign support. So I want to thank all of these. They aren't all of them. They were the initial contributors, and I do want to recognize Rosetta Stone, Language Testing International, College Board. Many of these organizations are here at the convention, and we do appreciate them. So when you go to the website, you see a lot of information about specific languages. You can click on choose your language and go to a lot of information about that specific language with scholarships that are available, all kinds of resources for your students. There's a section on why learn languages, what are the top 10 reasons to learn a language, what are some of the myth busters that we need to know about busting those myths about language learning. How are languages used in careers? We did some national opinion polling before we launched the campaign, and we found that among parents and students, the awareness level was extremely low about how the benefits of learning a language can offer opportunities in terms of future career aspirations and job opportunities. So that's a very important part of the campaign. The campaign is mainly aimed at parents and students to try to change those attitudes and change the mindset in this country about how vital and important languages are for all students. So there's a lot of information there. We're active on social media, a lot of different ways that you and your students can become involved. But I just want to focus on some of the student competitions that we've held since the program started and why it's so important to get your students actively involved. We know that in the language classroom, we launch them on that journey toward global competence, and we give them that push that they need. But part of the way that they can move forward is by understanding where they are on the language continuum themselves, where they are on that journey toward global competence, so that they can take up the reins themselves and help move themselves forward instead of always having to be pushed by the teachers. We've seen very dramatic changes in the classroom when students have the awareness level, many times through the can-do statements, many times through other ways that teachers empower students to understand where they are on that language continuum and what they need to do to move forward. So part of the reason for these competitions is to build that awareness among students so that they start to really see themselves as empowered language learners. So I want to start with the Concordia Language Villages competition that we first ran. 25 students had the opportunity to earn $1,000 scholarships, and they range from ages from 8 to 18. And I just want to focus on the little boy in the bottom left-hand corner, Tobias. And he is 8 years old, and he had to do a video in the competition about why he wanted to go to Concordia and why he wanted to learn other languages. So Tobias said, "I want to be a snake catcher." He's 8 years old. "I want to be a snake catcher, and there's snakes all over the world in different places. And I need to learn different languages if I want to talk with those people. And some of the places I want to go, one is France, and because they might fish there too. So even at the tender age of 8, he is starting to think about the importance of languages and why he wants to learn them and what it's going to mean for his future. Another student wrote or said in his video, "I'm Cuban American. As glad as I am to live in my country, I'd like to learn the language that runs in my blood." And this is very much in line with why we are focusing on heritage speakers and heritage learners. I think we sometimes forget the identity that language has for people. Language is at the heart of human communication. And so people really have that identity with their language, and this is extremely important, and we want to promote that certainly with this campaign. So if we go to the college level, the next campaign that we ran was called Your Story on the Rails. And the students who were studying abroad, college students, were able to win 15-day first-class Eurail pass. And so they, one of the students named Andy was from a small town in Pennsylvania. He's a rising sophomore at Washington and Jefferson College, and he's majoring in German. And he was doing an independent study on the production of chocolate. So he was going to go to Europe and interview different chocolate production companies and people who are involved in that process, and blog about them, because we required the winners to blog about their experiences. The only problem was Andy had really never been to a big city or another country. So this was a completely new experience for him, and I want to give a big shout out to Erin Welchel, who's standing in the back, because Erin is our point person on the campaign, and she really had to talk Andy off the ledge a couple of times as he was having all these experiences and blogging back how frightened he was. But the good news is, and we all know this happens, is that Andy is now going to spend his midterm in January in Gambia, and next spring he's going to study at the University of Austria. So Andy has made that transformation, made that incredible step on the journey, and that's something that this program did for him. The last one I want to focus on is a manga contest that we had, and 2 high school students won online tutorials in Japanese. The catch is they had never studied Japanese. They were drawn in by the Japanese culture and the manga comics, and they drew a picture and they won it, and they wrote about why this was so important. So we had 2 winners, 2 high school students, Xavier and Sandra, and Xavier wrote, "Learning Japanese is important to me because I would like to live in Japan one day and become a manga artist. Ever since I was 8 years old, watching my favorite anime Naruto has made me want to become a manga artist and also has influenced me to write my own manga." So here we have students who weren't even studying a language, but they were drawn in by the culture, and now they are going to be learning Japanese through this incredible program. So I just wanted to make you aware, because your students are eligible for all of these contests that we're running, and it's all about building that awareness and helping them and see themselves as empowered language learners. We are also sponsoring roundtables and events around the country that focus on the campaign aspects. And so we've done one with Rosetta Stone, Advocating for Change, Connecting Our Nation Through Language. We also did one with the Council on Foreign Relations regarding languages and the connection to national security. We have 2 events coming up in February, and if you're coming to JNCL Nicholas Advocacy Day, we're holding the National Education Association event on national teacher shortages the day before JNCL, so I'll be getting that information to Bill. We'll be getting it out to all the delegates, and hopefully you can come in early for that event at NEA. And we're also doing one in February at Georgetown University School of Foreign Service on languages, diplomacy, and national security. So all of these events are designed to raise awareness, not only about the campaign, but about the AAAS report and what we need to do as a country to close the language gap. So I'm encouraging you to get involved. we just developed a teacher toolkit, and you can use all these resources with your students. There's a very compelling video, if you haven't seen it anymore, about why our country needs to wake up and move toward bilingualism. We've designed a scavenger hunt for your students, so there are questions about language learning, and they can find the answers on the website, so it draws them into exploring and looking for those answers on the website. We also encourage them, if they're able, to get involved in the social media, become a blogger, and most importantly, to create a video and tell their story, and we will post it, of course, with the proper permissions. But these are very influential and impactful videos when students see them, and that's what we hope, that students will see videos created by other students and get involved. And I just want to end by showing you one of these videos. So I'm hoping our tech wonderful people can make this happen. Maybe not. Is it not going to run? They're not giving me any signal. Anyway, this is Jacqueline, and she's the daughter of one of our ACTFL members, Jana Chang. She already leads with Mandarin, French, and Korean, and in her video, she uses all 3 of those languages and tells you why language learning has been important to her. And so that's a great video to show your students, very inspirational.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline and I'm a senior in Kentucky. I'm currently a student of English, Mandarin, French, and Korean, and I hope to study many more languages in the future. 我是从小跟妈妈讲中文和跟爸爸讲英文，在学校教室我学了法文给5年，然后我自己学了韩文，用听音乐和看电视和建模的方法。Étant une étudiante de 4 langues, j'ai appris que les langues sont vraiment des outils essentiels qui nous permettent à interagir avec ceux qui nous entourent. 문화에 대해서 관심이 있으면 언어를 꼭 배워야 된다고 생각합니다. 저는 언어와 문화를 공부한 경험이 많아서 저는 다른 사람의 이야기에 마음으로부터 공감할 수 있는 국제 시민이 됐습니다. In the future, I hope to use the cultural understanding skills I've gained through my language studies to make an impact in both my local and global communities.
Great. So hopefully some of your own students will be featured on the website, and we can have more of them tell their success stories. I'm going to turn it over now to Steve Levine. One of the important components of our campaign is the America the Bilingual podcast, but I just want to end by saying I know that together we can do this. We have worked really hard for our profession, to promote our profession in the past, and I know that we can move forward together with this campaign. So I appreciate in advance all of your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. It's an honor to help you and to help all of you with your advocacy role. And over a couple of days that we've been at this conference, and we've been interrogating many of you in our recording booth, thank you very much. It has deepened my appreciation for how hard all of you work all day to not just teach languages, but to teach intercultural competence. Do I have that right, Becky? And on top of all of that, you're expected to be advocates for language learning, which strikes me as a pretty full plate. So it is a real pleasure for us to help you out with that endeavor. So the best way for me to explain what America the Bilingual is about is to let you hear it yourself. So buckle up for 100 seconds of America the Bilingual.
and suddenly you're dreaming in French, you feel conversant in French, and even if you're not totally fluent, suddenly it comes very, very easily.
So I actually met my wife on that same trip, and it was through Chinese that the whole thing came about.
They're never going to really learn the Greek. You don't speak to them in Greek, and their father, well, what does he know? He's just an American.
Welcome to America the Bilingual, a podcast for Americans like me who are learning their next language
And it was sort of like this condescending pity.
or would like to start.
I don't take pity well.
I'm Steve Levine.
It's really easy as an American not to bother learning another language.
Knowing multiple languages helps students do better in English and achieve better and have better graduation rates and better college going rate.
But we reported in prior episodes that Americans, when they do study abroad, go for shorter periods.
And you want to interact with your cousins and other relatives that, are your family, but you can't because they don't speak English and I don't speak Spanish.
For many years, there's been an increasing demand for world language teachers across the United States, and it's documented every year that we need many more.
America the Bilingual is part of the Lead with Languages campaign of ACTFL, the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages. Visit americathebilingual.com. We hope you like this podcast. If so, please let your friends know. It's the best way to spread the bilingual word. So there you have it, the trailer for America the Bilingual. We began in March with the kickoff of the Lead with Languages campaign and do our episodes every 2 weeks or fortnightly. It always sounds more sophisticated. And, or as our Mexican producer says, every 15 days. That's curious to me that we have a different count on days. We have produced 17 episodes so far on a variety of topics, and what we've done is organize them in ways that I think will be, or I hope will be helpful to you in your advocacy roles. So I was going to read you our vision, but I didn't realize that it would be a vision test, so I'm not going to try to read you that. But that's from our website, and basically it says, we do have a vision for America where bilingualism is normal, and where bilingualism and biliteracy is the next step in the long arc of educational attainment in America. So our cast, I'll run through quickly. Becky Rankin, who's here in the audience, first row, would you raise your hand? I think, is there anyone who doesn't know Becky? So Becky helps us out as associate producer in many ways, including really grounding us in what the world is like from the point of view of being a teacher. Fernando Hernandez is our Mexican producer from Guadalajara. He's here at the conference. And although he's a very young man, he has 10 years of professional radio experience. He's a real genius in sound design and mixing, as you heard a little bit of that. Mim Harrison is our editor and brand person, a real talent in herself. Carlos Plaza does our graphic designs, and you have some of that in your seats. If you've seen these postcards, that's a work of Carlos Plaza, and it's a premeditated effort to try to convey visually that being bilingual is just as America as apple pie. And we have our technology team here producing the website. And finally, last and least, my barklingual dog Chet, who so far disobeys me equally in Spanish and English. You'll be seeing more of Chet. And our partners here, and PRX is the Public Radio Exchange. And if any of you have connections to a campus radio station or community radio station in your town, they can go on to PRX and find America the Bilingual and acquire it and play it and broadcast it in your area. So let me show you a few of the episodes, give you an idea of what's involved. They range in length from about 15 minutes to 30 minutes. And this one, episode number 9, is called Ed De La Torre Doesn't Speak Spanish. And as you might imagine, This has to do with language loss or language shift in America. And what we try to do in our podcast is to have an individual, have one person that has a compelling story, and then bringing the experts to tell the background and tell what's really happening on a national and international level. So this particular podcast might be useful if you're advocating to immigrants and descendants of immigrants and convincing them how important it is to speak their native language at home. In a similar vein, Little Ketchup Girl. You'll have to listen to it to explain why, understand why it's called that. This is an Iranian family who moved when the Shah fell, and what happened to them in trying to adapt in America. Mother Tongue is a similar story about Jeannie Forrest, the mother, and Amber Forrest, the daughter. Jeannie, unfortunately, succumbed to what so many immigrants, especially in the 20th century, have succumbed to, which is she stopped speaking Tagalog to her daughter because she was fearful that it would interfere with her acquisition of English. And unfortunately, when they went back to the Philippines, Amber was not able to speak with her cousins and with her grandparents. Just Call Me Anna is a Greek story. You heard a little bit of that on the trailer. Anastasia, it's a wonderful story. She has 3 children, and they grew up in Miami. There's a large Greek community in Miami, actually, and they went to Greek Saturday school. And one of her 3, they all became proficient in Greek, but one of them, you won't believe what happened to him. So this episode, episode 14, The Vanishing High School Year Abroad, is about study abroad at the high school level. And we call it the Vanishing High School Year Abroad because it is. It's declining in popularity. Even if study abroad is increasing overall, the programs are getting shorter and increasingly are in English, which does not bode well, as you well know, for language acquisition. This is a story of a fellow my age who did spend a high school year in France, and it changed his life utterly. He was a dropout, a bad kid, a troublemaker, and it changed his life. Sealed con un beso is the story of the seal of Biliteracy, which has had a wonderful reception. We interviewed, among others, Shelley Spiegel-Coleman, who said it was the best reporting and best storytelling about the seal in any media. So that was high praise. American Outliers is a story about college study abroad, and the statistics on college study abroad are quite compelling to me, not in a good way. We receive, some of you know these numbers, I know, we receive about 1 million students at the college level per year internationally. And they come to finish a degree, either at undergraduate or graduate level, and of course to acquire English. They also bring in an estimated $37 billion annually in revenue. Americans going abroad, it's a far different story. As you know, the IIE is in the midst of a campaign to increase the numbers, but frankly, the campaign has not achieved its goal of doubling the number of Americans who go abroad. It's only managed to increase by 3 or 4 percentage points each year. We send approximately 230,000 Americans abroad each year, and they increasingly go for shorter periods of time and increasingly study in English. Part of this is a result of international universities teaching in English to attract an international audience, but again, it doesn't bode well for language acquisition. The story of the Ropers is quite an amusing story. The 2 sons in this family, of an Iranian mother and a Dutch father, went to college in Holland and graduate school in Spain. So it's quite a remarkable story and very, very much an outlier, but it shouldn't be. So these are some other episodes that talk about college study abroad. Our very first episode, The Lamp of Empathy, he went in a conventional semester abroad in college to France, and it changed his life. And the same with this fellow, David Wolf, went to graduate school. He gave up a free ride at Oxford to go to graduate school in France to get his MBA in France, taught in French. And his story is quite a remarkable one. Our most recent episode, episode 17, is about the gap year or bridge year, which is increasing in popularity and is some good news. Unlike the high school and college study abroad programs, which are getting shorter, a gap year is a year. And it was helped out quite a bit last year when Malaya Obama decided to take a gap year before going to Harvard, which was a wonderful thing for the industry. We interviewed Abby Falick at Global Citizen Year. She said their applications doubled after that news event. I think it holds great promise. And again, we tell an individual story of a wonderful young woman named Paulina of Polish descent. So she's fluent in Polish. She spent her bridge year in Brazil learning Portuguese. Quite a remarkable young woman who's now a senior at Tufts. This story is one of my favorites. It's about, the woman you see in the picture is a CEO of a software company. She grew up in southern Missouri and says she and her brother grew up bilingually. They speak English and hillbilly. She took a couple of years in French, didn't really accomplish that much, but she learned one thing that was very valuable. She learned how important languages are. And so when she was trying to expand her software company in Europe, she was smart enough to hire as head of sales an American polyglot who speaks 6 or 7 languages, and we interview him here. So it's a wonderful story, just showing the importance of language in business. I love the line that if you want to buy something, you can do it in your language. If you want to sell it, I think you can all finish up. And this is another example of using his French in his business. This hero of this episode is Ben Macklow, who runs Macklow Antiques in Manhattan. He's the one who learned French in college. After some unfortunate first steps, he got his life on track and learned French very, very well and uses it every day in his business of dealing with French antiques. And likewise, David Wolf uses his French, not so much in his profession, but as an advocation. He's head of the French-American Wine Society. Now this story, Nick Staffa, Eastern Star. Nick Staffa is a wonderful case of an American of Italian descent who, against the odds, became a star student in Mandarin. Starting in community college, moving on to SUNY, Stony Brook, was a star student, graduated carrying the banner, literally, of his East Asian department at SUNY, and got a job teaching Mandarin in Memphis until the program was cut. And he was poached by an international school in Korea. He went on to teach in Hong Kong, and now this Italian-American is teaching Mandarin in Taiwan. And so this episode talks about some of the dynamics involved in the global world we're in. Okay, I want to do a shout out again to Erin here, who put together these wonderful posters. These are digital posters or for our social media. She took excerpts, or your team did, from episodes and are sending them out on social media. So I'll just run through a few of those here. This is, it's hard to read here, but this is Congresswoman Julia Brownley, who we recorded on the episode of The Seal of Biliteracy. We also have social media for America the Bilingual. That's my license plate, by the way. And you can find us at Steve Levine. And I promised to post plenty of photos of Chet the barklingual dog here. So if you have time this afternoon, we'll be recording at our booth. Stop by and we'll interrogate you a little bit and hear what it's like from your side of the classroom. We also have these postcards that'll be sold on our website, but we're handing them out free here. So let me finish by just saying what an honor it is to help you with your campaign.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. I just want to say that I am incredibly humbled to be here, to have the opportunity to speak with amazing colleagues and to share my own experience growing into the role of advocate here in our profession. When I found this picture, it made me think so much about the many hats that we wear and the different roles that we play in our classrooms and in our lives every day. And I've never been someone to color in the lines or to not speak my mind, as many of you know. And so many years ago, I think that my journey into advocacy started even before I realized. When I was in high school, I went to a very small high school and was only able to take one language, but I wanted to take two. So I advocated to take it at a community college at night, a couple nights a week. And then I advocated to go to Rutgers a few days a week in my senior year so I could study a third language. And I didn't think about that until recently when I was reflecting on what I do as an advocate and how I ended up doing this. And then I really believe that my journey into advocacy started when I was 20 years old at NYU as a sophomore. And my grandmother sent me an article in the newspaper about a new scholarship program through the National Security Education Program called the Boren Scholarships. And I was studying Japanese, Spanish, and French, and it seemed like the perfect opportunity for me. I won in the first year of the program. I was thrilled. And when I came back, I received a phone call from Peggy Blumenthal at the Institute for International Education that the program was in jeopardy already. And she asked me if I would be willing to come and share my experiences with their board and then with the NSEP committee in Washington. And then eventually she took me onto public television to talk about it. So at 20 years old, I was pushed into this role that I loved. And I loved talking about my experience. And what I realized was that just talking about my own experiences as a language learner and as someone who cared about something was really what was going to hopefully make a difference. And then I didn't know that I was going to turn out to be an educator and be in a situation where I would be able to use these skills in other ways. When I created this slide and when I thought about what I do, I wanted to just share with you some of the things that I think that we can all do, which is to think about who we are on every level. On the surface, I'm an educator, but the building blocks of who we are all play into what we can do to make a difference. For me, that had to do with being a small business owner, being a member of a professional organization or several, and I've served on several different boards, and I've found that those experiences have helped guide my knowledge of what's going on and what needs to happen. I'm multilingual, I'm a community member, and I think we often forget about the role that we play in our own small communities, our broader state communities, and also as a parent. It's always been very important to me. I knew once I moved out of Virginia, where I first started teaching in the dual language immersion program in Arlington, that my daughter was not going to have the experience of an immersion program that I so badly wanted her to have. So I had to find a way to make it happen for her, which is what led me to be a small business owner, which is what led me to all of these organizations and to being here with all of you. And most importantly, down in the corner, which is tough to read, I'm an interpersonal learner. I need to talk to people to learn. And I've found that that's an important part of me and an important part of being an advocate. But what I really want to share with you today are some of the stories and some of the ways that I've been able to take just my own experiences and all the different pieces of me and put them together in a way that could potentially help us in different endeavors that we have as a professional community. Locally, I've been able to talk to all of my colleagues, learn from all of you. And as the president of the Foreign Language Educators of New Jersey, most recently I got an email from a teacher who was advocating in her own community where she lived for language programs that were going to be cut. She was doing that even though she said she was concerned because she taught in a neighboring community. And she wanted our advice as fellow educators on how to do that. I think that's something that we run into often. I hear from teachers all the time that they're concerned about advocating and speaking up and how that will affect them or impact them in their own contracts and their own districts. But this teacher was so concerned about it that she was afraid to do it even in the community where she lived, which is not where she worked. And I was thrilled that we could put together a whole bunch of resources for her as a team, as my board was able to do, and provide her with that information. Even here today, I had a teacher walk up to me and tell me about certain state requirements and how we could advocate to make sure that those requirements do not allow online learning to take the place of instruction. So I see that these tidbits are ways that we can all help each other, and I take those opportunities to write letters and to identify places where we can go. I say that, and then at a state level, I always feel that you need to be ready when someone asks you a question. For me, that happened most recently last year at a TESOL conference where I was seated next to a state senator who was receiving an award for his work with TESOL. He turned to me and he said, "Amanda, so what's going on next? What has to happen next in our state?" And I told him we're far behind in New Jersey. And he didn't believe that because people in New Jersey think that everything's great in New Jersey all the time. So I told him that even though we're great, we need to be better. And when I started to list the states around our country that already have well-developed dual language immersion programs, and I told him that New Jersey does not, he was stunned. He was very upset, and as a matter of fact, then got up on the stage to accept his award and said, "I was just speaking to Amanda here about dual language immersion, and I understand that New Jersey is extremely far behind. Today that changes, and you can count on me to change that in our state." I certainly didn't expect that to be what he said in his acceptance speech. But he walked off the stage and immediately handed me the card for his chief of staff and said, "Contact us right away." I'm sure he wanted to make good on his promises, and he did. And within a few months, his chief of staff contacted me. I provided them with lots of samples from all of your amazing states, and we have now developed a dual language immersion grant legislation that has passed our Senate and is on its way to the Assembly, hopefully to be signed soon in the state of New Jersey. You never know, so be ready to answer the question. And we may even be able to get it passed under this administration, which would be incredible as well. The next story that I want to tell you is I got the seal of biliteracy signed in our state, and that was amazing too, but I will tell you about that in a moment. What I want to share is one of my very favorite stories, and I'm very glad that Lisa is here to hear this story. Many years ago, when I first came to the Joint National Committee on Language, and I visited Washington, D.C., I learned a great deal from Dave Edwards. And he taught me a lot about my experience and how to use that to talk to people, just to talk to people. My colleague Ana Lomba was with me, and that day, the amazing Rush Holt was speaking to our group. And it was just a very exciting day because he's such a great advocate, and he's from my home state. At the end of his speech, Ana and I rushed out the door along with Marty and Lisa to get our pictures taken with him. And when we walked out, he turned to us and said, "I really want you guys to come with me." And we had no idea what he was talking about. He said, "Well, the president of Mexico is speaking to a joint session of Congress, and you really need to see this." He turned to the people who supported him and said, "Grab your stuff." The four of us ran in and grabbed our things, and he took us on the underground subway into the bowels of the Capitol building and took us up and literally stood outside of the joint session of Congress and scalped tickets for us. That's the only way I can describe it. And it turned out that Lisa and Marty and my colleague Ana and I got to hear the president of Mexico address a joint session of Congress in Spanish, sitting right near Madeleine Albright, who is one of my idols, and I got to meet her that day. So asking for the picture and taking the moment to spend some time with our representative really made the difference. Now he's exceptional, but you never know what's going to happen, so I would always say take that opportunity, don't be afraid to ask. And when you think about that, think about the people who are around you. On a national level, I didn't know who I knew when I first came to DC, but then I remembered that I have a friend from high school who used to be in the shows with me when I did musicals in high school. My friend Jim turns out to be an extremely conservative writer. And I wasn't sure how that was going to work with me, and I wasn't sure how it was going to work when I approached him about language. But one day, when I was visiting Washington, I asked Jim to meet with me. And we had dinner, and I explained to him about the FLAP program, and that it was absolutely vital to our ability to move forward. It could not be cut, and it was on the chopping block. Turned out that Jim is married to a woman who speaks many languages. And Jim felt that this was not an issue that was partisan, but quite a bipartisan issue, and one about which he could write. He wrote a wonderful article called No Flap Over Flap, which Marty has told me helped her to get into some Republican offices on the Hill and made a huge difference. And I just want to point out that these are connections that we don't often think about when we think about who we are and what we can do. And I know that when you're just one person, like I am, you never know how your voice can really make a difference when you're thinking about something as big as our federal experiences and legislation that can pass or not. But I do feel that using those connections and remembering who we are is really what makes the difference every day. And speaking of doing your research and thinking of who you are, most recently, we had the Seal of Biliteracy passed in New Jersey about 1.5 years ago. Happened almost around the same time of year, almost 2 years ago now, when I was told that the person on my board at Flenge who had been working on this was not able to make an important meeting with the senator. So I said, okay, I'll take the meeting. And I went to the meeting and ended up taking several meetings, and it turned out that we got so close, and they said, okay, Governor Christie's attorneys want to meet with you. So I found out who the person was, and I sat down at Google for a long time. I found out everything I could about this person, and it turned out that he went to NYU undergrad. Just thought, okay, I'll tuck that in my back pocket just in case. I walked into the meeting, and I always carry a portfolio. It's a black portfolio I've always carried. It happens to have the NYU emblem on it. I don't even think about it. I sat down, and he came in and sat down next to me with the exact same portfolio. And I looked at him and I said, we are twins. And from that point on, the conversation shifted. And all of a sudden, we were talking about NYU study abroad opportunities and studying language at the university level, and then talking about how important it was and how it was different being at NYU and being in such a diverse community. And we walked out of the room talking about it, and I can just say that it was, the Seal of Biliteracy was signed, and I can't guarantee that that was what changed it, but I can tell you that that same day, Governor Christie vetoed recess, mandatory recess for young children, but he signed the Seal of Biliteracy. So you just never know. You never know how your experiences and who you are can play a part in that. And finally, I just want to say this about my experiences. Teach your kids to speak up too. And I mean that literally and figuratively. My children see me every day doing things like this. They see how much time I pour into my professional organization work, my own work, and how much I revere my colleagues, how much impact my colleagues have on my own life, and how much languages have played such an important role in who I am and what I do. My daughter, once the Seal of Biliteracy passed, she's a budding journalist, and she decided that she would write an article for her school newspaper about the Seal of Biliteracy. As a result, her high school, which was not yet doing the Seal of Biliteracy, they published the article in the newspaper, and she had students coming up to her all the time asking her about it. Students who weren't even studying a language there, but were heritage learners who wanted to get some type of credit for their experience. And because of that pressure and because of all of the questions that came up, my daughter's high school is now using the Seal of Biliteracy. They started last year. And you just never know. To that end, also, I see other teachers doing the same type of thing. Administrators, my colleague Francesco Fratto did a video contest where he has students talking about what it feels like to be uncomfortable in the language and how important that feeling is to help us move forward. You never know what can happen. And if you just take a chance to share all of those pieces of who you are and think about all of the pieces that make up the person that you've become along the way, I think we can make a difference. And from my perspective, there are just 5 essential things that we need to focus on. We have to start in our classrooms. What you do in your classroom and the way you do it is the best advocacy you can do. It's the best thing you can do is to show the world that kids love being in your classroom and they love learning language. The second is collaborate. the more we work together, the more that we will see that there are differences. And I think, having Steve here today and thinking about the combination of business and language educators is something that's been on my mind for a long time, as Marty knows, and that I hope that we can see more of. I think that maintaining relationships with people around you and thinking about the connections, even if you actually use a graphic organizer and think about how the different people in your life can help you reach the goals that you have. And use media. Look for opportunities like the podcast series to share your ideas, your experiences, and make sure that people know what's important and how we can make a difference. Finally, don't give up. I've been doing this for many years and I love it. And Marty has guided me, and Dave Edwards has guided me, and all of my colleagues have supported me and made me feel good about the things that I try to do. Sometimes they're successful and sometimes they're not. But I think that if we're patient and we persevere, things like what we see today with the America the Bilingual podcast and certainly the amazing Lead with Languages campaign, we can make a difference. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak to you today. I know Marty wanted me to share that this PowerPoint will be shared with everyone so that you can see it later. Thank you.
We have very little time left, and we'll be able to take a couple of questions, but I wanted you to know that all of this information and the PowerPoints will be uploaded to the app that you can access afterwards. So be sure, if you want more information or if you want to get some of the things from these slides, they will be available. Is there anyone who would like to ask a question or make a comment? If so, go to the microphone, please, and state your name and affiliation.
Thank you, everyone. Just very briefly, thank you for this great panel. If you want to do advocacy, real life advocacy, we are sending from our booth 842, the Joint National Committee for Languages, messages to Congress for the Bilingual Education, Biliteracy Education, Seal, and Teaching Act. So please come by, you get a button, it takes 2 minutes.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you so much, and that these postcards with the America the Bilingual are wonderful, and that I'm going to collect any that I see and take them and use them to send good notes home to students, because what a better way to encourage that bilingual attitude than to have it to their parents.
Pam Gimmer, Indiana. I'm retired now, but I'm rewired. And I'm rewired as an advocate. Look for the people in your state that have given so much while they were in the classroom and who have led your state throughout the past years. When they get ready for retirement, you know who they are. Put them on your advocacy team. I'm enjoying a new journey, and it's just a real privilege and a pleasure to be able to speak up for all of you and the wonderful jobs that you're doing in the classroom and also at ACTFL, because that information, and there are a lot of new things on that website. Please use it. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for maybe one more.
I'm going to do it again and be last. My name is Martha Gorman, and I'm the new editor of The Language Educator. We'll be doing a great deal of work on Lead with Languages, and it would be wonderful to have your stories of how you are advocating and to aggregate them on an ongoing basis and share them with others through your member publication, The Language Educator. Please send them in.
Thank you. I'm afraid our time is up now. I would like to thank our panelists for their presentations. And also to the audience for your interest in the topic. You can rest assured that you will be hearing more from ACTFL about how you can advocate for moving the language agenda forward. Thank you so much for coming.